Have you ever noticed how the most dangerous threats in life rarely announce themselves? They don't shout, they don't posture, and they don't rush. They observe, they wait. They blend in so well that by the time you sense something is wrong, the damage has already begun. Not all hatred is loud. Some of it wears a calm face, offers a friendly smile, and positions itself close enough to learn the shape of your life. This is where real destruction starts, not with open conflict, but with quiet attention. The Stoics understood this deeply. They warned that what harms us most is not the obvious enemy, but the unseen influence we fail to notice because it feels familiar. In today's world, this danger has a name, even if most people never speak it out loud. It is the silent observer. This is not someone who merely dislikes you. This is someone who studies you. Someone who gathers information not out of curiosity, but out of intention. And intention is what separates coincidence from surveillance. You may think you've never encountered such a person, but chances are you have, and you dismissed the signs because they were subtle enough to ignore without sounding foolish. Maybe it was the coworker who always seemed to know where you'd be next, the acquaintance who referenced places you'd been without you ever mentioning them, the person who appeared repeatedly in your routine as if your schedule had been penciled into theirs. At first, your mind calls it chance, because chance feels safer than the truth. But patterns are never random. Patterns are built through attention, repetition, and fixation. In a world saturated with data, no one needs to break into your phone to track you. People do it passively, patiently, by watching what you reveal and what others reveal around you. A tag here, a casual mention there, a comment overheard, a routine observed. Piece by piece, a map forms. And once someone has a map of your life, they don't need to chase you. They simply position themselves where they know you'll be. This is why the silent observer is so dangerous. They don't confront you. They don't provoke you. They don't give you a clear reason to draw a boundary. Their power comes from remaining unnoticed. They want you comfortable, predictable, unguarded. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul is shaped by what it repeatedly allows. When you ignore the feeling that something is off, when you silence your instincts to appear polite or rational, you grant access to people who never earned it. And instincts are not superstition. They are ancient pattern recognition systems refined by survival. That unease you feel, the one you can't fully explain, is often your mind detecting a discrepancy between what you're seeing and what you're sensing. The Stoic response is not fear, and it is not paranoia. It is awareness. Calm, grounded, deliberate awareness. You observe without reacting. You note consistency instead of isolated incidents. You ask yourself simple questions. Who seems to know more about my movements than they should? Who appears too often without a clear reason? Who makes me feel watched rather than accompanied? These questions are not accusations, they are assessments. And assessment is the foundation of self-protection. The silent observer relies on your predictability. Break it, and their advantage weakens. Change routines, vary your timing, reduce unnecessary sharing. Not as an act of hiding, but as an act of sovereignty. Epictetus taught that freedom begins where unnecessary exposure ends. You do not owe access to your inner or outer life to anyone simply because they stand nearby. The more unpredictable you become, the less useful you are as a target. And make no mistake, observation without consent is about control. It is about turning your life into a reference point for someone else's agenda. The Stoic does not confront such people emotionally because emotion feeds their relevance. Instead, he limits what they can see, what they can learn, and how close they can get. He understands that not every threat needs to be fought, but every threat must be recognized. The greatest mistake you can make at this stage is assuming no one is watching simply because no one is speaking. Silence is not absence. Often, it is preparation. And once you understand this first sign, once you stop dismissing patterns as coincidence, your vision sharpens. You begin to see how quiet observation can evolve into something far more damaging when left unchecked. Because those who watch long enough eventually act, and when they do, they rarely start where you expect. They start where you are weakest, not through force, but through influence. Once someone has learned how to observe you without being noticed, the next move is almost never direct. Direct attacks expose intent, and exposure is the one thing a calculated enemy avoids. Instead, the silent observer evolves into something more destructive, something far harder to defend against the quiet betrayal. This is where harm is done not by confrontation but by distortion, not by force but by influence. You begin to feel it before you can explain it. Conversations change tone. People who once seemed open with you become reserved. Opportunities that felt secure quietly disappear. Nothing dramatic happens, and that's exactly why it works. The mind looks for explosions, not leaks. But it is the slow leak that sinks the ship. Quiet betrayal operates through whispers, half-truths, and strategic omissions. The person behind it rarely lies outright. They don't need to. A carefully framed concern does far more damage than an accusation. "I just worry about him lately. She's been under a lot of stress. I don't know if he's really ready for that responsibility." On the surface, these sound harmless, even compassionate. Underneath, they plant doubt. And doubt spreads faster than truth because it feels reasonable. The Stoics warned that most people follow impressions, not facts. Once an impression takes hold, reason is rarely invited back into the room. This is why quiet betrayal is so effective. It recruits others to do the work for them. The betrayer does not isolate you directly. They let perception do it. You may notice that when problems arise, your name seems adjacent to them even when you had no role. Credit for your work becomes strangely diluted. Praise arrives late, if at all. Criticism, however subtle, finds its way back to you with alarming accuracy. And when you try to address it, you're met with confusion. "No one said that. You must be misunderstanding. Why are you being so defensive?" This is not coincidence. It is triangulation. Information is filtered through a single source who controls the narrative while appearing neutral. The Stoics understood this danger well. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by men who smiled while sharpening knives. His defense was not obsession with reputation but discipline of character. He knew that chasing every rumor would only entangle him further. The mistake most people make is reacting emotionally. They confront the wrong people, defend themselves too loudly, or withdraw completely. All three responses serve the betrayer. Emotional reactions make you appear unstable. Loud defenses give legitimacy to whispers. Withdrawal leaves the narrative uncontested. The Stoic path is narrower and far more effective. You anchor yourself in what you can control. Your actions, your consistency, your clarity. You do not chase perception, you outlast it. Epictetus taught that if someone speaks ill of you, do not explain yourself to them. Live in such a way that their words collapse under the weight of reality. Quiet betrayal feeds on confusion. It starves in clarity. This does not mean you remain passive. It means you become precise. You limit what you share and with whom. You keep records not out of paranoia, but out of self-respect. You build direct relationships with those who matter, instead of allowing information to pass through intermediaries. If something feels off, you address it calmly and directly with the person involved, not the messenger. The betrayer loses power the moment they are removed from the center of the exchange. Another critical mistake is assuming that betrayal comes from enemies. It rarely does. It comes from proximity, from those close enough to hear your doubts, learn your habits, and predict your reactions. Seneca warned that a prosperous man has more to fear from friends than from enemies because friends have access, and access in the wrong hands is leverage. This is why the Stoics advised patience in trust, not cynicism but time. Time reveals patterns. Time exposes inconsistency. A person who consistently benefits from your confusion is not confused themselves. They are positioned. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Quiet betrayal succeeds only when you outsource your sense of self to the opinions of others. The moment your worth depends on being understood by everyone, you become vulnerable to anyone who controls perception. The Stoic builds identity inward, not outward. Reputation is weather. Character is climate. One changes daily. The other defines the land. When you understand this, the betrayal loses its sting. You stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and start asking, "What does this reveal about them and what does it require of me?" The answer is almost always the same: fewer words, clearer boundaries, stronger alignment with those who demonstrate loyalty through action, not reassurance. Quiet betrayal cannot survive under steady integrity. It requires chaos, insecurity, and reaction. Remove those and it collapses under its own weight. And yet this is only the second layer, because for some, observation and betrayal are still not enough. Some people don't just want influence, they want access. They don't just want to affect your world, they want to enter it. And that is where the mask of friendship becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. If quiet betrayal weakens your ground, the mask of friendship walks straight through the door. This is the stage where danger no longer works from a distance. It moves close, it listens, it agrees, it reassures, and that is precisely why it is so effective. The most destructive enemies are not those who oppose you, but those who align themselves beside you long enough to learn where you are most exposed. A false friend does not announce themselves with hostility. They arrive with warmth. They accelerate intimacy. They make you feel seen, understood, supported. And because humans are wired to lower defenses in the presence of perceived safety, access is granted willingly. The Stoics warned against this not because they distrusted people, but because they understood human nature. Trust given too quickly is not generosity. It is vulnerability without verification. A masked friend seeks proximity before credibility. They want your plans before your proof, your fears before your resilience, your habits before your boundaries. And once they have those, the balance shifts. You may not notice the change immediately. At first, they are helpful, encouraging, curious. They ask thoughtful questions. They remember details. They position themselves as someone who truly gets you. But slowly, subtly, the tone changes. Encouragement turns into guidance. Guidance turns into influence. Influence turns into quiet control. They begin shaping your perceptions under the guise of concern. "I just don't want you to get hurt. I'm only saying this because I care. I think you're underestimating how people see you." Each sentence sounds protective. Each one plants doubt. The danger here is not the words themselves, but the authority you unconsciously grant them. When someone has been labeled a friend, their opinions bypass scrutiny. That is the opening. This is why betrayal most often comes from inside the circle. Outsiders must fight their way in. Insiders are already trusted. Seneca observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and the false friend exploits this perfectly. They feed your imagination, selective information, partial truths, carefully framed narratives, until you begin questioning your own judgment. And when you question yourself, you rely on them more. That dependency is the goal. The mask of friendship also allows plausible deniability. If confronted, they retreat behind affection. "Why would I hurt you? You know I support you. I'm on your side." And because their actions are rarely blatant, only patterned, you hesitate. You don't want to accuse without proof. You don't want to appear ungrateful, so you stay silent. And silence becomes consent. The Stoic response is not suspicion of everyone, but patience with everyone. Marcus Aurelius wrote that time is the truest judge of character, not intensity, not promises, not emotional closeness. Time. A true friend remains consistent when there is nothing to gain. A masked one becomes restless when they are not being fed information, access, or relevance. Watch how someone reacts when you set a boundary, when you withhold details, when you slow the pace. A genuine friend adjusts with respect. A false one pressures, guilt trips, or subtly withdraws support. That reaction reveals everything. Another sign is inversion. The masked friend often positions themselves as your protector while quietly undermining your confidence. They encourage dependence while discouraging autonomy. They may downplay your successes, amplify your risks, or frame independence as recklessness. This keeps you close, and closeness keeps you controllable. Epictetus taught that no one can harm you unless you consent to the judgment that you are harmed. The masked friend seeks that consent by shaping your judgments about yourself. The antidote is not confrontation. Confrontation invites manipulation. The antidote is distance combined with observation. You do not explain. You do not accuse. You reduce access. You share less. You watch more. You let actions speak without interruption. Over time, the mask slips because maintaining a false role requires constant energy. When the supply stops, irritation appears. Resentment leaks. Subtle hostility replaces warmth. That transition confirms what words never could. Protecting yourself here requires discipline. Not everyone deserves the same level of access. Not every listener is an ally. Stoicism does not demand isolation, but it demands discernment. You can be kind without being exposed, open without being unguarded. Trust is not an emotion. It is a conclusion drawn from repeated evidence. And once you understand this, the false friend loses leverage. Because without access, there is no weapon, and without influence, there is no control. Still, some do not retreat when access is limited. Some escalate. When observation fails, when betrayal stalls, when friendship loses its grip, they test something else. Boundaries. They push, slowly, casually, incrementally. And this is where the threat moves from psychological to potentially physical. Because the next phase is not about closeness, it is about pressure. When proximity no longer grants control, pressure replaces patience. This is the phase most people misunderstand because it rarely looks dramatic at first. It feels like tension, unease, small moments that leave you unsettled but not alarmed enough to act. And that hesitation is exactly what allows escalation to occur. The gradual attack is not chaos, it is testing, a calculated sequence of boundary violations designed to measure your resistance. A person with malicious intent does not leap immediately into open aggression. They probe, they experiment, they push just far enough to see what they can get away with, then adjust accordingly. A remark that sounds like a joke but carries an edge. A casual invasion of personal space. An unnecessary display of dominance disguised as confidence. Each act alone can be dismissed. Together they form a pattern. The danger is not in any single moment. It is in the direction of movement. Stoicism teaches that wisdom is the ability to perceive cause and trajectory, not just events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way. Ignoring early warning signs does not neutralize them, it strengthens them. People who escalate rely on your reluctance to react. Silence is interpreted as permission, politeness as weakness, confusion as compliance. This is why the gradual attack feels disorienting. You sense something is wrong, but nothing feels serious enough to justify confrontation, and so the line keeps moving. First, it is verbal, comments framed as humor that undermine you publicly while preserving deniability. Then it becomes behavioral, blocking your path, interrupting you, repeating small acts of disrespect to establish hierarchy. Later, it may turn into implicit threat, references to violence presented as jokes, stories meant to intimidate without accountability. At every stage, they are watching, not to see how you feel, but to see how you respond. This is not impulsive aggression, it is rehearsal. History shows that harm rarely appears without a prelude. Escalation always leaves fingerprints. The Stoic response is not fear, and it is not avoidance. It is clarity paired with decisive boundaries. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about them. The correct judgment here is simple. Repeated boundary violations are not accidents, they are information. And information requires response. The moment you clearly, calmly assert a boundary, the dynamic changes. You do not explain your emotions. You do not justify your discomfort. You state limits, directly, briefly, without apology. This communicates something critical: awareness. Those who rely on intimidation retreat when resistance appears early. Those who do not retreat reveal their intent. Either outcome is valuable. Another essential practice is documentation, not for obsession, for leverage, dates, behaviors, witnesses, patterns. This is not paranoia, it is preparation. Stoics were not passive observers of injustice. They were strategic actors. Seneca warned that unchecked behavior grows bolder over time. Recording escalation protects you legally and psychologically. It keeps you grounded in reality when manipulation attempts to distort it. Distance is also a form of power. Removing yourself from repeated exposure reduces opportunity. You are not obligated to remain accessible to someone who disrespects you. Accessibility is a privilege, not a right. And when escalation continues despite boundaries, action must follow. Not emotional reaction, structural intervention, authority, separation, safety. Courage is not enduring unnecessary threat. Courage is acting before harm becomes inevitable. Many people wait for certainty. Certainty arrives too late. The Stoic principle is anticipation, not reaction. When a pattern reveals increasing aggression, the wise do not wait to see how far it goes. They end the experiment. Understand this clearly. Escalation does not stop on its own. It stops when it meets resistance, accountability, or consequence, and if none appear, it advances. This is not pessimism. It is human behavior observed across centuries. The earlier the response, the smaller the cost. But not all threats escalate openly. Some retreat, regroup, and choose patience. When pressure fails, they play the long game, and that is where the final danger resides. Because patience combined with resentment creates the most calculated form of harm. When direct pressure no longer works, when intimidation fails to bend you and boundaries block easy access, the threat does not disappear. It evolves. This is the long game, the most dangerous phase, because it looks like calm. Silence returns. The tension fades. You might even believe the situation has resolved itself. But what has actually happened is not retreat, it is recalibration. A patient adversary does not need to rush. They understand that time can do what force cannot. They watch, they wait, they collect. This is the phase where people make the fatal mistake of relaxing their awareness. They assume that because nothing is happening, nothing is being planned. Stoicism warns against this illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote that appearances are often misleading and that we must train ourselves to see beneath the surface of events. A patient enemy relies on your comfort. They allow weeks or months to pass. They re-establish friendliness. They lower your guard, not with pressure, but with consistency. Polite messages, neutral interactions, small gestures that signal normalcy. And slowly you begin to doubt your earlier judgment. Maybe you overreacted. Maybe it wasn't that serious. That self-doubt is the opening they need. During this phase, information becomes their primary weapon. They take a quiet but intense interest in your plans, your relationships, your vulnerabilities, not through interrogation but through proximity, casual questions, shared conversations, moments where you speak freely because nothing feels wrong anymore. But every detail you share is logged. Every pattern is mapped. They are not acting emotionally. They are preparing strategically. History shows this pattern repeatedly. The most devastating betrayals rarely come from loud opposition. They come from trusted proximity, from allies who waited until the moment of maximum leverage. Seneca warned that the greatest danger often comes not from enemies, but from those who sit closest to us. A patient adversary understands timing. They do not strike when you are strong. They strike when you are distracted, tired, exposed, or dependent, perhaps during a transition, a career change, a relationship conflict, a moment when your resources are divided. Their move may not look like an attack at all. It may look like policy, a decision, a conversation behind closed doors, an action taken while you are absent. By the time you realize what has happened, the consequences are already embedded in systems larger than you. This is why Stoicism emphasizes self-sufficiency and restraint in disclosure. Epictetus taught that the wise person does not give away what cannot be taken back. Not everyone needs to know your next step. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Privacy is not secrecy, it is sovereignty. The defense against the long game is not suspicion, it is discipline. Discipline in patterns, discipline in trust, discipline in boundaries that do not dissolve just because time has passed. Trust must be maintained through consistency of action, not the absence of conflict. Pay attention to who benefits when you are weakened. Notice who remains present only when you struggle, but distant when you stabilize. Observe who asks many questions, but offers little substance in return. These are not proofs of guilt. They are indicators of interest. And interest without reciprocity is a signal worth respecting. The Stoic response is not confrontation, it is positioning. Reduce dependency, diversify support, strengthen alliances with those who have demonstrated loyalty over time. Keep your plans flexible and your inner circle small. Above all, trust patterns over promises. Words are easy, time reveals truth. A patient adversary loses power when you are no longer predictable, no longer transparent, no longer dependent on their approval or presence. The ultimate victory is not exposing them, it is making them irrelevant. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that external threats only disturb us if we allow them authority over our mind. When you stop granting that authority, when you live deliberately grounded in your values, their strategy collapses. Because the long game requires access, and access is something only you can give. The Stoic does not live in fear of hidden enemies. They live in alignment with truth, clarity, and restraint. And in doing so, they make themselves very difficult to harm. We've reached the final point, and this is where everything comes together. By now, you should understand something crucial. The greatest dangers in life rarely announce themselves. They don't arrive with shouting or open hostility. They arrive quietly wrapped in familiarity, patience, and plausible deniability. The people most capable of harming you are often the ones who never raise their voice, never show their hand, and never rush. They observe, they adapt, they wait. And if you are not living with awareness, they will eventually find the moment when you are weakest, most distracted, or most trusting. Stoicism was never about living in fear of this reality. It was about seeing it clearly without becoming consumed by it. Marcus Aurelius did not rule an empire by assuming goodwill. He ruled by understanding human nature without resentment. He accepted that betrayal, envy, and manipulation were part of the world, and instead of being shocked by them, he prepared his mind so they could not destabilize him. That is the real lesson here. Awareness is not paranoia. Awareness is clarity. Paranoia imagines threats everywhere. Clarity recognizes patterns and responds with restraint. The person who learns these lessons does not become bitter. They become precise. They stop oversharing. They stop explaining themselves to people who have not earned that access. They stop mistaking proximity for loyalty and politeness for virtue. They stop assuming that time alone turns intentions pure. Time reveals intentions. It does not cleanse them. One of the most important Stoic disciplines is the discipline of judgment. Epictetus taught that events themselves are neutral. What harms us is the meaning we assign to them. When you encounter silent observers, quiet betrayal, false friendship, gradual escalation, or patient manipulation, the danger is not only what they may do, the danger is how you respond. If you panic, you hand them control. If you obsess, you feed their influence. If you deny reality, you become vulnerable. But if you observe, calmly, adjust intelligently, and protect your inner world, their power shrinks dramatically. You do not need to confront everyone. You do not need to expose every threat. You do not need to prove you are right. Those impulses are emotional traps. The Stoic path is quieter and far more effective. You limit access. You strengthen your position. You choose silence where others would argue. You choose distance where others would beg for clarity. And you let time do its work, because time is ruthless with false intentions. People who play games eventually reveal themselves through inconsistency, impatience, or escalation. Your job is not to chase that revelation. Your job is to be steady enough to survive until it appears. This is why Stoicism emphasizes inner sovereignty above all else. Your thoughts, your actions, your boundaries. These are yours to command. No one can sabotage what they cannot reach. No one can manipulate what they do not understand. And no one can destroy a person who refuses to hand over their emotional center. If you take nothing else from this, remember this principle. Trust patterns, not explanations. Trust consistency, not intensity. Trust behavior over time, not words in moments. People reveal themselves not in what they promise, but in what they repeatedly do when it costs them something. When you align yourself with this truth, your life changes quietly but permanently. You stop being surprised by betrayal. You stop being devastated by manipulation. You stop internalizing other people's malice as your failure. And instead, you move forward with calm strength grounded in reality, not illusion. This is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming unshakable. It is about living in a way where even if someone intends harm, they find no open door, no emotional leverage, no chaos to exploit. That is Stoic resilience. And it is built not through aggression, but through discipline, awareness, and self-respect. If you've stayed with this until the end, understand that this knowledge is not meant to make you suspicious of everyone. It is meant to make you selective, deliberate, and internally free. The world has always contained silent threats. The difference now is that you can see them. And once you see clearly, you are no longer easy to deceive, easy to destabilize, or easy to use. That is the real power. Not dominance over others, but mastery over yourself.